So today I'm going to do a continuation of synthesizing data or creating data for test purposes. In my profession, I've had need for data sets or data sources to test applications with, or tools, ad hoc analysis type tools, and the data sets weren't necessarily robust enough or weren't in the proper format, or it's something we had to learn to what was going to be the proper format. So this is how I generated data for use with some of my tools to test with. And all right, so the synthetic data or synthesizing data example, I am going to generate some data based on just some random numbers like we did in the first go round. So what I've done is I did a Google search, as I mentioned in the intro, and I searched for most common first names, and I think I found 200. And then I looked for most common last names in the United States, and I found 100. And then most common street names in the United States, I found 107. And I'll come back and we'll reference these in a minute. And then I found cities in Georgia, and I think I just chose the most populous, and so this gave me a result of 115 cities. So if we wanted to generate data from this based on first, last name, street address, and the city that they live in, we could easily do that. So for starters, I'm going to take my sets of data here, and I believe I've already done it with this one. I'm going to click on and select all of the data in the table. So I'm using Control Shift and the arrow keys. I'm really fond of keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to highlight all of that, and I have named this first. Let me show you how I do that by going over to the last name. Hey, and I'll highlight that. Oh, I've already called that last. And I'll come over here and I'll highlight this. Okay, so this is street name. So once you have a range of rows and columns selected, they can be multiples on the same page like I've done here. We just come up to the little name box over here, and we're going to put in street and hit enter. And that is now known as street. And then for city, we'll do the same thing. I'll highlight all of that, and I'll come over here and I'll type in city. So now I can reference those names. I can reference first, last, street, and city. So for first name, last name, street, and city, I have 200 records. I have 100 records. I have 107 because I couldn't do things simply, and 115. 107, 115. This is just so I don't have to keep going back and forth. So in the first one, we used random between, and we're going to do that same thing. So we can start with rand between, and I'm going to do 1 and 200. And that gives me a number. That's going to be the number for the first name. What we can do then is use a second function called VLOOKUP. I'm a big fan of VLOOKUP. It's relatively straightforward. VLOOKUP, and we're going to look up this number, which is the 186 at the moment. It'll change in a minute as it recalculates. And we're going to look in our first name table. So I can come over here and I can click and I can highlight this. Zoom, 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 zoom. All the way down to 200. And if you'll notice up here at the top, it actually put the word first, because that was the name of this particular section of the table. I'm going to put a comma in for the third argument, which is the column that we want to pull out of this, which is going to be the second one. We're going to use the first one to look up our random number, and then the second one is going to pull out the name. And then at the end, sometimes you can omit this, but I put in false so that it returns an exact match versus a close match. Okay, so now if it calculates or randomly picks 10 as the number, it's going to pull up amber. Oops. And I'll recalculate. And you can see it's just cycling through the list. So we can also do this for last name. And I'll do the same thing. We can do rand between, and we're going to do between 1 and 100. Okay, and then we're going to do the same formula that we did. It's VLOOKUP. And we're going to look up that particular cell, and this is going to be in the last named table. And we're going to look up column 2, and we're going to put false in at the end, if I could type it correctly. And hit enter. Alright, so we got Kyle Morris. And then we can combine the names with a feature called concatenate. You can also just do it with the ampersand. So I want to do the cell that's got Kyle's name in it, and I want to put a space in there, so I'm going to do quotes, space, quote, another and symbol, and then the last name, and then hit enter, and it's going to say Laura Castillo. Alright, so now, see, every time I click, it recalculates. Now what we can do is, there are 200 names plus 100 last names, so 200 first names, common US names, 100 common last names in the US as well. So that should give us quite a few options. But I want to show you how many possibilities there are to not have duplicated. So I'm a big fan of conditional formatting, so I'm going to come up here to conditional formatting, and the first option is highlight cell rules and come down to duplicate values. So if anywhere in this list there comes up a duplicate value in the range that we're about to create, it will put it in red background with red text. Alright, so I'm just going to stretch this down, and what I've done is I've selected this whole range with my mouse, and in the bottom right hand corner there's a tiny little square, and when you mouse over it, it gives you the little black plus sign. And when you're selecting, it gives you the big fat white plus sign. When you get to the edge, it gives you a four-way arrow, which indicates move. So I'm going to grab with the little plus sign, and I'm going to drag down. I'm just going to fill the screen up right here, and it recalculates, and you see that out of the, how many is that? That's 20, a good random set. We have no duplicates, so we can drag this down some more. We can go further, and we can also recalculate. So if I drag it down, I'll just stop and let it recalculate. I'm going to zoom out because it will show up in bright red, and I can recalculate, and we've got no duplicates so far. Let me see if I've got that done right. I believe that's right. That goes 8 through 68. So yep, that is working right, and we're not having any duplicates. So that gives you a nice random generation for names, first names and last names. So combined, you've got a person, and now you can do some testing of your tools with this particular data set. But we can go further because we've included city, street, and city. We know that all the cities are in the state of Georgia. So we can say this is name, and we're going to do address. We're going to do city, and we're going to randomly pick those, and the state is going to be Georgia. Now we could also go through here, and it's recalculating every time I hit enter, because that's what it's supposed to do. But it should be fun to see if any of those come up as being duplicates. All right, I'm going to zoom back in so we can see this. So everything is going to be in the state of Georgia. For the address, I want to do a couple of things. Well, we can do city. City's going to be real easy. We'll just do rand between 1 and 115. So comma 115. Hit enter. Oops. And that's actually correct. What I'm going to do is now I can combine that with the VLOOKUP in a single formula instead of doing two like I did over here between the random calculated and then pulling back the name. Is I can use this, I can insert this into my VLOOKUP. So I'm going to look up this random number. I'm going to look this up in city, and I'm going to put in false. And Oh, I forgot to tell it where to look it up. Column 2, comma, false. Got in a hurry. All right, so we got Dublin, Georgia. We can do the same thing with address. So with address, we've got a street number. Going to insert a column. So street number. What kind of a street number do we want to do? So we can do random between, and we can do between 1 and 1,000, or we could do 5,000, just to give us a street number. Oh, we got a duplicate. Oh, we got 2 duplicates. But that's okay. They're going to live on a different street, and those people will only exist for a moment. And now they're gone. Okay, so if you have street numbers in your area, my street only goes up to 3 digits. I grew up on a street that had 4 digits, and I have seen street addresses or street numbers that have 5 numbers. So depending on your data set that you want to replicate, you can add those numbers however you'd like to. So again, that's just another random generation. And now we're going to pull up the streets just like we did with city. So I'm going to start typing this appropriately this time. We're going to VLOOKUP, and we're going to ran between. And for streets, we've got 107, so I'm going to say 1, 107, close the parentheses, and that takes care of the ran between function. And we're going to look this up in, I'll put a comma, we're going to look this up in street. And we're going to pull back column number 2 because that's where the name actually is. And we're going to say false. All right, so that pulls up Hillcrest Drive. Hey, I know a Hillcrest Drive. We could even go a step further, and we could combine the formula for it's my friend BMO in Diablo. I'm going to copy that formula, hit escape, and I'm going to come back over to this formula. And what we're going to do is we're going to combine these two by pasting it in. And so it's a random between da 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 da. And we're going to do that and we're going to do a space inside of a quote so that it says the number and then the street name. And then I'm going to put one more ampersand in there. So now it will generate, oops, I've got 2 equal signs. 1301 Smith Road. If I can get rid of this whole column. And now I can copy this down. And now we have, this is only, how many did I say it was? That's 55 data sets. I can copy this down. 55, 62. Whoops. Go as far as you want to. 270. Row 270, and that is 263 data sets. Okay, at the moment everything is still randomly generating, so every time I hit refresh, which is F9, if I recalculate, if I put in a new formula and hit enter, it's going to recalculate. And out of the 263 record sets, we only have 1 duplicate, and that is for Miss Sharon Young in Redan, Georgia. So to keep this data versus it recalculating every time, what we can do is we can, do you want to keep the first and last name together? And yeah, that'll be fine for now. So I'm just going to highlight these, again using my holding shift and control and using the arrow keys. Woo. You can do just shift and arrow keys and it goes over 1 cell at a time. If you use shift control, it goes to the end of the cells that have content. And then so if I hit the down arrow while holding shift and control, it goes all the way to the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that data.
I'm going to go back up to the top of my spreadsheet. I'm just going to come over here to a blank spot, and I'm going to paste, where is it? Values. Okay, and now those names are set in stone. They will not recalculate. You can hit F9. They're not going to recalculate. I can come back over to this other set and recalculate. And you see they recalculate. But that gives you a very broad set of data that you can quickly generate. You could do social security numbers, you could do phone numbers, you could throw in zip codes like I said earlier, but that's just a little bit more lookup research data stuff than I really wanted to do. So any number of things, if you can build a table with some data in it, such as names and streets. Where am I at? I'm way down here at the bottom. Names, street names, cities, states, countries. You could do area codes. You could do the first 3 digits of a phone number, which is known as extension. And they're always going to start with at least a 111. So you could start with 111 and you could go up to 999 if those are all really real. And you could generate between 111 and 999. And then for the last, you could do area codes the same way. You could do country codes. You can do the last 4 digits of the phone number because they start at 1 and they go to 9999. And that should or could theoretically be a phone number somewhere. And it doesn't have to be real if you're testing your data. There's other stuff that you could do. If you wanted to choose favorite color or cat or dog person or what kind of a dog, you could create a table with just numbers and then breeds of dogs, colors of dogs, types of dogs. Dog, cat, dog, cat, dog, cat. You could even calculate that randomly by saying 1 or 0 or 1 and 2, depending on how your thought process is. So generate a random number between 1 and 0. Ran between 0 and 1. Okay, and that's going to randomly pick, and then we can say, let me do this over here so it's bigger. I can say if ran between equals 0, then dog. Close the argument. Or, so this is an if then else function. So if, I'm pointing at it with my fingers because that's going to work. So if this number is equal to 0, then the word dog, comma, otherwise if, and I could copy and paste, oops, ran between 0, comma 1 is 1, then cat. Otherwise, it's going to pick one or the other. We can just put in 0, close the paren, and it says cat. So cat, dog, cat, dog, cat, dog, and then nothing. So if it's between 1 and 0, we could play with the number of decimal points in there. So if it's more than, if it's a fraction or a decimal point, but that's still fine. It gives you, that's probably a realistic spread. How many people like cats? How many people like dogs? How many people don't like dogs or cats? So that's an example of something that I've done in real life to generate data for testing with. You got any questions? You can throw them in the comment box. And we'll try again tomorrow.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.